Alrighty, sweet. Well, hello everybody. Thank you all so much for being here on this chilly February evening. My name is Malcolm Alexander. I'm a senior journalism major here at IC, and I'm also the host of the Career Corner podcast, which is sponsored by the Center for Career Exploration and Development here on campus. You've probably walked past it, going through the tunnel a few times. If you're unaware, tonight's event is being recorded, both audio and camera, video, for our YouTube and Spotify accounts. So if you'd like to hear anything that we talk about tonight, later you can find this episode in its entirety on Spotify and YouTube. We're also live streaming this, so if you would like to be in the live stream at any point, we will be doing a Q&A later in this session. So if you come up with any questions and would like to be featured on our live or on this episode, please sit on those questions and we will be around to have you say them. Before I introduce our guests, I would just like to give a shout out that it is currently COW, Career Opportunity Week. Oh yeah, COW. If you don't know what COW is, it's a really great week of programming that is put on by the Center for Career Exploration and Development. There's a lot of great programs going on this week, some resume building workshops, all kinds of things to help students get more in touch with what they might want to do with their career and sort of how to prepare for the working world. So keep your eyes peeled, be on the lookout for any sort of events that might be going on besides this awesome one. To start us off, I'd love it if our two awesome guests could just introduce themselves really briefly. So if you could both say your name and when you graduated from Ithaca and what your current role at the Ithaca Times is.
Yeah, I can go first. My name is Madison Vogel. I am the managing editor and the associate publisher of the Ithaca Times. And I graduated from Ithaca with my BA in journalism in December 2023.
Hi, I'm Mack Rovenolt. I am currently a reporter at the Ithaca Times, and I graduated from Ithaca College with my journalism degree in the spring of 2022.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. To start us off, I'd love it if I could hear from both of you just a little bit about sort of what are the typical duties in your day or your week? What are some of the responsibilities that your role requires? If you want to walk us through like a typical day for you, that'd be cool. However you'd like to go about it.
Yeah, for sure. One of my favorite things about this industry is that every day is a little bit different. As the editor, most of my time is taken up by trying to find stories, assigning stories to reporters like Mack, editing copy, answering any questions that my reporters might have, giving advice on who to reach out to. Yeah, but we print every week, so most of my busier days are in the beginning of the week, Mondays and Tuesdays. Tuesday is deadline, so we just sent the paper to the printer tonight, but then later on in the week is mostly, like I said, answering questions about stories and assigning stories. We have editorial meetings twice a week where we just kind of touch base on where we're at on things. And that's kind of what I do.
So similar to Maddie, I, not in every way, God no, but in some ways, I do a lot of sourcing, trying to find things to write about and pitch to Maddie, trying to stay connected with the community. I do a lot of writing, so I also not just write for the Ithaca Times, but I also write for the Trumansburg Free Press, which is part of the Finger Lakes community newspapers that is owned by the Times. I think I said that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I do writing for both Ithaca and Trumansburg and Ulysses. So those stories I source myself and pitch to the Finger Lakes newspaper's editor, David. And so a lot of my time is spent writing stories, doing research with Trumansburg, connecting with town boards, things like that, and trying to source photos for those stories as well. And right now I have a special project that I'm working on from our publisher that has been taking up a lot of time as well.
So super, super busy, both of you. And I'd like to sort of address that. I think a lot of people, journalists too, but a lot of people who aren't journalists see journalism as like an industry where you don't get any free time outside of work, you don't get any time to yourself, don't get any time to sort of explore other avenues besides your job. I'm just curious to know what kind of things do you guys do outside of journalism work?
I think that's a stereotype that can sometimes be true, especially, honestly, especially when you're doing reporting rather than editing. I feel like as an editor, I do have more of a work-life balance than I did as a reporter because I'm not, at City Hall meetings at 6 p.m. or school board meetings until almost midnight. But one of the nice things about the job is that it's flexible with our hours, at least just speaking for our newsroom. Other newsrooms are different, but I think one of the more important things is creating the time to spend not thinking about work. So yeah, in my free time, we both have second jobs, so that takes up a lot of our free time. But for me, I know at least my second job is a way for me to kind of reset mentally and get out of the newsroom headspace that can sometimes be challenging to escape. And then other than that, I really enjoy spending time with my family, friends, my dog. Been trying to get into line dancing recently, so that's been fun.
Like Maddie said, we both have second jobs, which I agree, it's a really good way to get out of the newsroom headspace, although it can be tough to balance sometimes because my job conflicts with meetings, so thank goodness for Zoom recordings.
Yes.
I can go back and watch meetings later and follow up with the people that I need to, which makes it a little bit easier. But outside of having two jobs, I also do a lot of art. So right now I'm preparing for an art show in May with the Ithaca Writing Studio, which is really exciting. And that's kind of how I relax and wind down. And yeah, I also spend a lot of time with my partner and our friends.
That's awesome. Obviously, because this is the Career Corner podcast, we like to focus on what is it like to have a career, and that includes what is it like to do things away from your career. How do you enjoy yourself? How do you stay sane and doing good work at your career? And I think you both just provided really, really great answers to how to do that, especially line dancing. That sounds awesome. That sounds really fun.
It's a unique hobby.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, especially around here. To throw it back a little bit, I'd love to hear from both of you about your time at Ithaca and any specific classes, any extracurriculars, maybe just personal projects that you did outside of anything else that you feel like really sort of got you to where you are today or taught you really valuable skills.
Yeah, definitely. I know that a lot of people in the journalism space really give this same advice, but I think getting as much hands-on experience with local news that you can outside of just, class assignments is very beneficial, even if it's not necessarily the Ithacan. I know that at the Times we have internships pretty much all the time. Over the summer, we usually have a good cohort of interns that they help me out and they are able to gain some hands-on experience. And I think for me, at least, the internships I did during college were the most valuable. I also, when I was in college, had multiple on-campus jobs, and I think just working, even if it isn't in journalism, just getting that professional experience in an office environment or any environment really is super helpful. It teaches you how to get along with others and professional development. But I feel like that's the advice that most people give, is just get as much hands-on experience as you can.
I would have to second what Maddie said. I had a lot of on-campus and off-campus jobs as a student, and I worked at the Ithacan as well and had internships. And I think just generally getting to work with other people and be exposed to new things, new ideas is really good. Especially as a journalist, I feel like it can really help change your perspective on things and give you new perspectives, which is good to have. It's good to be open-minded because we kind of have to write about a little bit of everything all the time, right? Yeah.
Awesome. So that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, if there are any, especially student journalists, who maybe feel like they haven't done enough, maybe enough internships, maybe enough on-campus things, maybe they just don't feel like they have the connections that they need, as we all know those are important in basically every industry. Do you have any advice for those students about sort of, that might be, the same thing that you just said, get out there and get into it, or anything else?
Yeah, I know that so I graduated early, so I didn't get as many internship opportunities as I could, and that was definitely something that was a little bit scary heading towards graduation for me. But my second year, I did an internship over the summer with a small newsroom in Pennsylvania, super small community, maybe 2 reporters on staff, kind of similar to how our newsroom is structured. And the only reason I got that internship is because it was in my grandparents' town, and I spent some time there growing up, and I just grew up my grandparents reading that paper every day, and I just reached out to them and asked if they were interested in having any summer interns, and they said yes, absolutely. And I would say that was less of an internship and more of a reporting gig. It felt more like a job than an internship. From day one, it was kind of hands-on. So I think my advice would be to not be afraid to just reach out of the blue, because most of the time the answer is going to be yes. And then, yeah, don't be afraid to work for small companies and small newsrooms just to get that experience, because I think it taught me more than maybe a bigger national newsroom would have. But
you get more of a personalized experience when you work with smaller papers. So print's important. I feel like as a journalist I have to say that. But yeah, I didn't have too many internships as an undergrad. I was in college sophomore right when COVID hit, and so internship opportunities were hard to come by for a little while. So thankfully I was able to get in with the Ithaca Voice, which I got through the Park Center for Independent Media. And then after graduation, I had another internship, I think you can still call it that, with the National Park Service. But having those two experiences still kind of felt like it wasn't enough, because a lot of newsrooms were looking for a lot of experience. So I was really lucky that staying here in Ithaca, I ran into Maddie and the publisher at two different events. Well, one at work, one at an event. And we were able to connect that way. So sometimes it's not even necessarily about who you know, it's just about where you are at the right place and the right time.
I love that you both emphasize that like smaller local outlets can really be great. Obviously, the Park Center for Independent Media is very pro that, but also I just think it's great to get that out there, to have more students feeling like you don't have to go to one of the major or even like a top 50 market. You can go somewhere that really needs good journalists. And that kind of brings me to my next question, which is, as you both mentioned, Ithaca is somewhat of a small market and an interesting market. I'd love to hear about some of the challenges that come with that and some of the strengths and the things that are really nice about that.
Yeah, I think Ithaca is super unique, but especially in the journalism space, because we have a plethora of options for local news, which is something that I really love about Ithaca. Ithaca is very passionate about supporting local news most of the time. Obviously, news deserts are a thing that are growing across the country. A lot of places don't have any local news outlets, and we're very fortunate to have several, probably more than I can name, because there's obviously radio and TV as well. But yeah, I think that's definitely one of the advantages, but it can also be a little bit of a disadvantage, because that means that sometimes people are a bit more critical of your reporting, which is okay. And, you know, it's always welcome. Constructive criticism is always welcome, but it's a little bit more pressure knowing that there's going to be a lot of people reading it, and, you know, a lot of people who have a much higher education than, you know, a bachelor's degree in journalism. So that's a little bit intimidating, but it also means you have more resources for, you know, talking to experts about certain topics, and the academic community can really be an advantage.
I would say one of the other challenges, and this is something that I faced a lot when I first got out of school, is people tend to stay a long time. So there might be students that work at a paper for a little while and then leave, and so you have short-term openings. But for most of it, one of our sports reporters has been at the Times for almost 30 years, right? Yeah. Same for other papers. They've been there 5, 6, 7 years. And so it can be a little difficult to find a way to wiggle yourself in. I used to work for a different paper locally, and when I left, I was hoping to find something else, and I just couldn't because nobody wanted to move. And so it was really hard at first, and so I left the industry for 2 years. And was thankfully able to come back and work for the Ithaca Times. But yeah, it can be really difficult just because people like being here and they tend to stay.
That makes total sense. And that, I think that reminds me of at least for a lot of college students, I think there's an idea that you need to have a very specific beat that you follow that becomes your thing. Maybe not just sports, but something even more specific that you can sort of make a name off of. How important do you both feel having any kind of specific beat was? I know earlier, Mack, you mentioned that journalists typically kind of have to know a little bit about a lot of things, but some people think that if you know a lot about one thing, then it helps you out when it comes to getting jobs. So I'd love to hear from both of you about how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak as much to how it helps you getting jobs, but I know that as newsrooms kind of downsize across the country, I think it's important to be able to report on almost anything. It's very challenging, but obviously, like going back to what we said before, having that open mindset is really important. And I don't think that being assigned a specific beat is as critical as it maybe once was, especially in smaller newsrooms. I know our reporters have to cover anything and everything from arts to, hard news. Yeah. So I think it's more of an advantage having the flexibility and willingness to cover other things.
I think it's more fun, too, getting to cover different things. Like this past week, not this past week, but I'm going to be working on a story on the Tompkins County Legislature, and just last week I got to do a story about arts vibrancy in Ithaca. So it keeps you on your toes in a way, getting to do a little bit of everything. And like Maddie said, I think there was a time where having a beat was really important, like doing something really well for 30 years got you the book deal. But as somebody who's really young and in the industry right now, being able to do everything at a small paper feels more important to me than being that really hard one-line, like, know-it-all about one subject kind of reporter. Maybe someday I'll feel differently, but for right now, I love that I get to do a little bit of everything and meet people from all over the county.
100%. That sounds really fun, and I'd love to hear from both of you what your favorite or just one piece that you've worked on that you're really proud of or thought was really fun, just a piece that you really enjoyed doing, basically.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a specific piece that I really enjoyed working on, but I know when I was doing more reporting, I really enjoyed reporting on the local public school district. It's a hot topic that a lot of people are very passionate about, which kind of makes it more fun to work on because you get to talk to people with all different kinds of opinions on it. But yeah, I just think that overall reporting on local politics and elections, like the school board elections and things like that, are the most fun for me personally because they do feel very influential. But that's just personal preference. I think everyone has their own favorite things that they work on.
I would say for me, my favorite is doing a lot of arts and entertainment stories, just because I myself love being involved in the local art scene. So getting to meet new people, find new ways to get in and do cool things is really fun for me. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd also love to hear a little bit about what are any, because you both have been professionally practicing journalists for some time now, at least a couple of years or a couple of months or more than that. What are some mistakes that you feel like you either made or witnessed other people make as a young, early in the stages journalist that you would like to maybe warn other journalists about not making?
Yeah, for me this is an easy answer. I think that one of the most important things to try and learn and avoid doing is not reaching out to all the sources or people who are mentioned in your story. You really have to make sure that you cover your bases when you're writing about people, and make sure that you're asking them their perspective as well. Even if you assume that they may not respond to you, it's still important to reach out just in case and offer them the chance to share their perspective on things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to include all of their perspective, but it's key to balanced reporting is having multiple perspectives in there. So that's my personal answer. And yes, I have made that mistake.
I have made a similar mistake when reporting on certain hot topics in the community. Not that sources weren't necessarily reached out to, but that I never got a response. and decided to move forward with the story anyway. And so it became a little lopsided in terms of perspective. And that's when I finally got responses. So really pushing, not in a hard and demanding way, but really pushing your sources to be like, hey, I want to include you, making sure that they know that you want them to be a part of this and not just, I'm looking for a source, but like, I want you to be a part of the story, is really important. And it makes people feel good.
Absolutely. I've made those mistakes myself, and I love that you guys are emphasizing that don't frame it as you're trying to get something out of someone exactly, but that you're trying to be a service for this community and represent them in some way and give them a voice. I think that's really important. Obviously, that's kind of what we're trying to do as journalists, hopefully. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here, but I don't want to deprive anyone in our audience of asking questions. So if anyone has a question, shoot your hand up really high right now. You have like 5 seconds. Okay, we're calling it. There's no questions. So I would just like to ask you guys if you have any closing thoughts, any sort of final advice for our listeners, anyone who's a budding professional in the journalism field or just interested in journalism.
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice for, I guess specifically Ithaca College students, would be to consume as much local news as possible. Totally unbiased there. But also know the people who are, important in the community. Know who the mayor is. Know the, city alderpersons. I think it's really important to know your local elected officials. Not that you have to go to every city council meeting every single week. But yeah, one of the things I remember about my first intro to journalism class is my teacher asking who the mayor of the city of Ithaca was, and no one had an answer. So I think it's really important just to know about those things. Obviously, there's a lot of time constraints as a student. You have a lot of homework and things like that, and you might not necessarily want to read news articles in your free time. But especially if you're looking to get into journalism, especially local journalism, it's really important to know the important people.
My advice is going to sound really corny, but I can be a very corny person. My advice is do not give up, even if you're not getting the jobs that you want. When I took a break from working in local journalism, it wasn't necessarily because I wanted a break. And I came here to work at Ithaca College, which was a great experience and gave me a lot of opportunities to go back and get a marketing certificate. And I didn't stop trying to do things in my quote-unquote downtime. I started writing a Substack. I made a podcast. Don't go listen to it. And I started a YouTube channel. Like, I was just trying to do something to keep my skills up, even if it wasn't working directly in the local news scene. So just don't give up. Something has to come of all the hard work that you put in, even if it doesn't feel like something's going to, something will. Yeah. I
love that. Well, thank you both, Maddie and Mack, for being here on this evening. I think this was a great discussion. I think we learned some really interesting stuff about the industry. So thank you both, and thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.